In the great history of the Sith Order, there is an expanse of time that lasts thousands of years during the ancient Sith Empire that we unfortunately know literally nothing about. In the years stretching from 6900 to 5300 BBY, the Sith Empire grows and thrives in the Stygian caldera under the reign of the Dark Lord Tulak Hord. Entire wars have been fought, and stories have been told that have simply been lost to time. The Jedi Order is usually the one to blame for this, as the sacking of Korriban in the year 5000 BBY led the Jedi Order to destroy most of the ancient Sith knowledge. Although Tulak Hord reigned for a staggeringly long period of time, he was regarded as one of the greatest warriors in galactic history as well. But unfortunately, we know shockingly little about him, since all records were expunged by the Jedi Order. With that said though, we do know that there was a certain rival of his that Tulak considered to be his most dangerous adversary. Because hardly any knowledge survived the Sith Purge though, there are incredibly powerful Dark Lords who fell into anonymity. However, this is the story of one of these Sith that not only rivaled one of the greatest Dark Lords in the entire timeline, but also crawled his way out of the grave just to take his name out of obscurity. This is the story of Aloysius Callig. Long ago, sometime prior to the year 5300 BBY, Callig was born into a family of immense wealth and prestige. While his homeworld was not specified, it's assumed that it was one of the world which lay deep in Sith space, one of the core, since he knew the location of Korriban. Despite being born as an aristocrat though, Callig discovered his incredible talent in the Force as a young man, and decided to abandon his family to join the Order of Sith. He was incredibly ambitious, and had dreams of rising to places in the galaxy beyond what a simple wealthy title could offer. And so, shirking his inheritance, he journeyed to Korriban and was trained as a Sith. Ascending to the top of his class, he was unrivaled at the school in lightsaber combat and in battlefield strategy. But anytime he came close to achieving one goal, he would move the goalpost even further. Being the best in the academy was not the end, nor was the best of all of Korriban enough. His sights were set right alongside Tulak Hord himself. By now, Hord had embroiled in a successful campaign against the Republic, and was on his track to winning his legendary battle of Yin and Kabosh. It was during this time that Callig approached Tulak Hord with an offer, one to become his right hand. Tulak, however, dismissed him outright, but Callig was undeterred, and decided to prove himself by defeating Hord's top general in single combat. After doing this, he then extended his offer again, at which point Hord acquiesced, and appointed Callig into the same position of power. The new Sith Lord had successfully brought himself into greatness, and would lead Tulak's forces to numerous victories. One of the leading causes of his success was that he had been pro-alien, not something that was usually tolerated in the species' system of the Sith. He would invite beings of all different races into his ranks, allowing his forces to be bolstered with the best and the brightest from all around the Empire. But not only had he been ambitious, but he had been incredibly clever as well. As we will later learn, Callig was wise to the machinations of his enemies, and could circumvent even the shrewdest of battle tactics. However, one plan that he apparently did not see coming was the jealousy of a superior. All of his victories had only served to earn him the suspicious glare of the Dark Lord Tulak Hord, who began to feel threatened by Callig's influence and power, even though this was the same man who had personally slaughtered 1,000 Jedi during the War of Kabosh. Tulak was frightened by how cunning that Callig had proven himself to be. Ironically though, Callig viewed himself as one of Tulak Hord's closest friends, and it seems his visions of grandeur had stopped at being number 2, and he did not wish to challenge Tulak, which was a realistic goal to him though. By this point, Hord had reigned for eons, but since the Sith know better than to suffer a rival, Tulak Hord arranged for Aloysius Callig to be assassinated. When this happened, Callig's family fled and went into hiding as they feared that they were next to be targeted. Meanwhile, the Sith Lord's body received a proper burial on Dromund Kaas, and remained entombed there for a millennia. Like with the rest of the ancient Sith though, his name would long be forgotten to legend. The only place it was recorded after the Jedi ransacked Korriban was in the writings of Tulak Hord, who acknowledged Callig as his greatest rival. But despite his physical death, Callig had one thing that he had beaten Hord with. He knew the secret to preserving his spirit following his physical demise. His soul would remain in his tomb on Dromund Kaas for 1,000 years, unknown to anyone. And in that time, the Callig family fell from grace. Their wealth vanished over generations, and even their name was lost. By the time that Vitiate took the world of Dromund Kaas as the capital of the new Sith Empire, the Callig family descendants were but lowly slaves. The Emperor would arrange to have the Dark Temple constructed over the tomb to serve as a prison for the many ghosts of the ancient Sith Lords. When this happened, Callig's spirit became restless within the halls of his temple. At some point, the rogue Sith breached the Dark Temple in hopes to gain ancient power and knowledge for themselves. Instead though, they stirred the dead from their slumber. Unaware of what they had actually done, Callig dominated the minds of the intruders and turned them into his servants. And then, he made his temple his own private kingdom. Any Imperials or Sith that trespassed on his home would become possessed, grafted into the network of servants. In the year 3643 BBY, close to the end of the Cold War, Callig was stirring yet again, sensing a disturbance in the Force. His unknowing descendant had become a Sith Inquisitor on Korriban and had grasped their first lightsaber. This descendant would eventually become known as Darth Knox, but for now, they had been a powerful Force-sensitive recruit from the slaves of the Sith Empire. The Inquisitor was apprenticed to a Sith Lord by the name of Darth Zash, who would send him on an errand into the Dark Temple for the knowledge of Lord Callig. Knox's mere presence drew Callig from his slumber once more. Initially, he attacked his descendant, believing that they were a threat, but he soon came to his senses, and he realized that they were flesh of his flesh, blood of his blood. He came to terms with the fact that he was now dead, and learned that his descendants didn't even know who he was, nor the history of their great family. Callig was insulted, enraged that his bloodline had fallen so far from grace that their children didn't even know where they had come from. He then vowed to help Darth Knox, to lead him down a path to restoring the family name to great glory and power. From this point onward, he became something of a spiritual guide, an advisor to Darth Knox when he went on his journey as a Dark Lord. Though it was very draining for him to manifest in a visible spirit form, he would do so to help one who would continuously call him flesh of my flesh. While the Inquisitor was off running more errands for his master, Callig decided to spy on Darth Zash, to determine what she was preparing for, some kind of ritual, and that she had already recruited 2 new apprentices. Callig went to his descendant and informed him of these developments, warning him that no matter how kind and generous his master was, that she could never be trusted. He then instructed Darth Knox on where he could find Callig's legendary mask, which had the power to protect him from the schemes of Zash. Later, after the Inquisitor had gathered all of the artifacts of Tulak Hord, Callig would visit him one more time. He explained that he discovered the location of a lightsaber, his own lightsaber in fact, one that he had entrusted to his loyal servant. The servant promised that his family line would keep it safe until the time where Callig's heir would come to claim it for their own. Darth Knox would then claim his inheritance, and his master Darth Zash would declare it time for them to perform the ritual with Tulak Hord's stolen artifacts. The spirit of Lord Callig informed his heir that Zash had been performing the ritual to protect herself from the Force, and sternly warned him to strike his master down as soon as possible, but not to confront her alone. Darth Knox would go to the Dark Temple as instructed by Zash, but brought with him a Deshad assassin, Cam Val. As it turned out, Callig was right. Zash's body had rapidly aged from darkside degradation, and her sorcery, which now kept her alive, only did so for a finite period. She was dying quickly. She now sought to use the essence transfer ritual of Tulak Hord to forcibly take control of her apprentice's body. But just before she could complete the ritual, Cam Val interrupted and attacked her. Unexpectedly, while Zash's body died, her spirit went in the Deshad assassin instead. Once the battle was over though, Callig would explain that perhaps due to the Deshad's natural resistance to the Force, that the soul of Cam Val was also allowed to remain in the vessel alongside Zash's, neither of them having full control. But now, with the danger of the descendant over, he formally declared the Inquisitor the heir to the legacy of Callig, and officially gave him the title of Lord Callig. Unfortunately, the victory was short-lived though. Zash's superior, a member of the Dark Council, Dark Thanaton, attempted to send the Inquisitor to the tomb of Darth Andrew. Upon entering the tomb, Darth Knox was viciously attacked. The demented spirit tore at him, and had the spirit of Callig not intervened, he would have died. Callig used the Force to cut Darth Andrew's attack off, to banish the spirit away. He then scolded his descendant for being foolish, to be a wanderer, a failure, one that was nearly possessed by another. This was when he told Darth Knox that there was something unique about his presence in the Force which drew spirits to him, hence why Callig himself had awoken and been summoned when the Inquisitor first entered his tomb. Callig's words turned to venom. He chided the flesh of his flesh for not seeing through the deception of Darth Thanaton, realizing too late that the tomb was filled with the bones of Thanaton's enemies, all sent to their death. To enable Knox to gain more power to defeat the Dark Council member, Callig directed him to the tomb of the ancient Lord Ergast in order to obtain knowledge of a technique known as Force Walking. This was an arcane ritual, one which required a great strength of will on the part of the practitioner. It allowed a Sith to bind their restless spirits to themselves to increase power, and once bound, the user could draw from the ghost's energy, channel it into powerful exertions of Force power, reaching untold levels of strength. But this ritual was not without great danger. Lord Ergast had died to it, binding too many spirits at once. This had overwhelmed the host, inflicting not only pain to his soul, but his body, being rent apart, resulting in a violent explosion of Force power beyond his control. He had died from his body and soul being ripped apart by the accumulated Force energies. However, a cure to the sickness did exist. Lord Callig knew that it would be a quick way for his descendant to gain the power that he needed, and so he instructed him to find the secret. The valuable piece of information was the last thing Callig would be able to offer Darth Knox, as this would be the final time that he would see him. He told his descendant that he had used the last of his strength to defend him from the spirit that had just attacked him, and that he could now no longer be of aid. After Darth Knox obtained the power of the ritual, he bound 2 spirits to his body and went off to face Darth Thanaton. Unfortunately, Callig was partially wrong about his power being enough to defeat the Dark Council member. Thanaton easily incapacitated the old Inquisitor, and it is even said that the Council member killed him. Keep that in mind when talking about the power of Dark Council members. However, the combined power of the 2 ghosts had previously absorbed were able to spare Darth Knox from a permanent death. He would conclude that more power was needed in order to defeat the Dark Council member, however. Eventually though, the descendant would gain this power and would overthrow Darth Thanaton, taking his seat on the Dark Council. In this way, Darth Knox restored the glory to the Callig name and fulfilled the last wishes of his dead ancestor. And that, my friends, is the story of Aloysius Callig. Although most of his story is told after his death, he quickly proves himself to be very different from most Sith. Although he was viciously cunning, he never betrayed his descendant and didn't use any sort of ritual that would resurrect himself. Never attempting to possess the body of Darth Knox, he stayed true to his word, guided the Inquisitor from slavery to rulership. Despite having shirked his family's title when he was alive, Callig would guide his bloodline back into greatness and prominence, and restore the glory that had been taken from them by Tulak Hord. Callig set himself apart from the other Sith with a single word: loyalty, though this was a fault of his that did cost him his life at the hands of Hord. However, he remained true to the flesh of his flesh, and he did everything he could to selflessly guide the young Sith into power. Not only was he incredibly powerful himself, to the point of telekinetically ragdolling fully trained Sith Lords, but he was also very knowledgeable. It's likely that this ability to force walk would have remained completely unknown to history had it not been for the spirit of Callig, since he was the spirit who was a contemporary of the Lord Andrew. He knew secrets that the modern Sith would have lost, and he kept them for his descendants alone. It's also likely that Darth Knox took the secret of Force Walk with him to the grave as well, since we do not see this ability ever used again in the lore. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of the story of Callig, the only rival of Tulak Hord? Do you think he was far too trusting and altruistic to be a Sith Lord? Or do you think he makes up for it with power and wisdom? Let us know your thoughts down below. And if you like getting holocrons about these lesser known Sith in the dark parts of Star Wars, be sure to tell us down below, and we will go searching. But until next time, may the Force be with you, and have an incredible day.